Hi, Joe Pepraki from Loyola Press for Pop-Up Prayer. And today, my guest is Jude Huntz. He is a chaplain at the University of Kansas Medical Center and a longtime pastoral minister. Hi, Jude. How are you?
Good, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So, you and I have been talking about the idea of journaling and prayer, tying journaling and prayer together. And you told me that you've been journaling a long time.
Mhm.
And you mentioned you tie it to the liturgical year. Tell me how you do that.
Yeah, so I do the daily readings every day, and originally it started as Alexio, then it moved to an Ignatian experience. But lately I've just been trying to step back and say, okay, what is the gospel trying to say to me now, and getting into the flow of the readings as a continuous life lesson. So, for example, we're doing the Gospel of Matthew, and that started with the Beatitudes, and I've been really conscious of seeing how the Beatitudes weave into the readings each day, even when we're out of the Sermon on the Mount, and then how does Jesus appropriate the Beatitudes, and how am I supposed to be appropriate the Beatitudes in my ministry and in my life and whatnot? So that's kind of the way in which I do it. And when we get into other liturgical seasons, it may be the desert, it may be a
Mhm.
place, and it may be the temptation of Jesus becomes a long thing where, those three questions sort of permeate a long string of things
Sure. And
throughout a
then,
gospel.
yeah, and then, so what do you write about then? If you're thinking about these things, then
Yeah.
what do you write and why write?
Well, as a chaplain, and as a pastoral minister, you're kind of, you're involved in the work of Jesus, right? So you're thinking about, okay, how does Jesus do this? I'm walking through the hospital and I'm going from place to place, and it may be a trauma thing, it may be an emergency room thing, and you look at some of those scenes in Jesus's life where he's, pressed by all these folks. I need to be healed, and sometimes I'll just think about, okay, how did he deal with that? How did he, and how can I live that? And so I'll just kind of write about those things. It'll be my own experience, and trying to connect it to Jesus' own experience, and trying to go through his life and seeing how it can appropriate into my life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So, in closing, what advice would you give to anyone who's thinking, maybe I'd like to try this journaling and for prayer? What are some practical tips?
Yeah, yeah. I would try the scriptures. A lot of people pray, or I mean, a lot of people read scripture every day, but they don't necessarily connect it to journaling, because journaling, for a lot of us is about our own experience. But
Hmm.
you can kind of bring those two things together if you're reading scripture or if you're praying scripture. Um, bring that into your journaling and bring it into your experience, and you're going to find it's like chocolate and peanut butter. It's going to create a wonderful new thing in your journaling experience.
I love it. That's very practical advice. I know a lot of people have combined journaling and prayer. I did it for many, many years, and then one day I just stopped, kind of like Forrest Gump just said, I think I'm going to go home now. And but yeah, it's wonderful practice, and
Yeah,
thanks so much for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us today, Jude.
glad to do it. Thanks, Joe.
And thank you all for joining us today for Pop-Up Prayer. This is Joe Pepraki. Until next time, God bless.